I thought legalizing marijuana was supposed to take organized crime out of the pot business. Newsflash, it is not. Well, a startling report from NBC News this morning reveals that foreign cartels embrace homegrown marijuana in pot legal states. The reason is simple. According to Colorado Sheriff Bill Elder, they have found that it's easier to grow and process marijuana in Colorado than ship it throughout the United States than it is to bring it in from, let's say, Mexico or Cuba. Federal officials say that Chinese, Cuban, and Mexican drug rings have purchased or rented hundreds of homes in California, Colorado, and Washington, where lax pot laws provide cover for cartels. So is it time to admit that legalized pot in the whole experiment has failed? Here to debate that question is Mason Vert, who's a spokesman at the Marijuana Policy Project, joining us from Denver. Mason, it's great to see you. This is pretty wild that we have Chinese, Cuban, and Mexican mafia / cartel folks renting properties in Colorado and California to get their product out. How is this good for the states where pot was legalized?
Well, this is actually something that's been going on in every state around the country for decades. And now in states like Colorado and Washington and California, what we're seeing is that the demand amongst the population in those states is being met by a new legal market where the product is being controlled, it's being grown and sold by licensed businesses. And because there's still that demand in these other states that are not controlling marijuana, people are still producing it and then sending it out there.
Mason, they're able to undercut the expensive. I've browsed in some of those stores in Colorado, the infused, lavender infused edibles, all this stuff. This stuff's expensive. The cartels can come in, rent these places, undercut the legal pot, and it's sometimes a lot more potent, believe it or not, and a lot more dangerous. And they flood the market with that, undercutting legal pot, not causing it to be a problem.
I don't know where you're shopping for marijuana, but if you've ever been to a marijuana store in Colorado,
see what all the stoners are buying.
But you're talking about the prices, and the fact is that you can buy marijuana for the same or lower of a rate than you could on the street. No one is going out and calling around to illegal drug dealers or trying to meet on the street corner. I mean, imagine if alcohol was being sold illegally.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, all right, I get your point. All right, let's hear what Colorado law enforcement, who are actually on the front lines here, what they're saying about this wonderful legalization experiment.
The vast majority of people that we come across at these grows are Cuban nationals. They're organized drug trafficking organizations who come to Colorado to grow their marijuana.
Colombia is to cocaine as Colorado is to marijuana.
And do you think that the state is turning a blind eye to this?
I think they are absolutely turning a blind eye to
this. Experiment has failed. And I urge any state that is thinking about legalizing marijuana to learn by our mistakes. Don't let this happen in other states.
Final thought from you, very quickly.
Well, there's a reason why Mexican cartels and Chinese drug rings are not renting out houses in the suburbs to distill whiskey and bootleg it around the country. It's because it's a regulated product. That's why Donald Trump supports letting states establish their own policies and was working with Congress to pass a law to do that.
We'll have you back. I think it's a disaster, but we'll see. Well, our kids, I think, are going to be on the front lines of having to deal with this years from now. We'll be right back. That's all the time we have tonight. Follow me on Twitter. Shannon Bream takes things from here with a great show. Shannon.
Laura, great to see you tonight. Thank you so much. We begin with a Fox News alert. The president focusing on North Korea in his barn burner Nashville campaign rally. But his top diplomat is getting ready to take on Kim Jong-un's right-hand man in New York. Infamous in North Korea as the ex-spy chief who's had a bloody hand in some of the rogue nation's most notorious attacks on South Korea. And the president, the reason that he was there in Nashville, Tennessee tonight, supporting Congressman Marsha Blackburn's Senate run. She will join us live. Plus, it was missing from the president's rally. No mention of Roseanne Barr's controversial tweet. Trace is tracking the latest fallout for us tonight. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Kim Jong-un's right-hand man is on a rare diplomatic mission to New York right now. He will meet with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to lay the groundwork for the president's highly anticipated summit with the Hermit Kingdom's leader. It appears June 12th is back on track. We've got team coverage for you tonight. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry on the president's latest immigration comments. And by the way, the rapid-fire reply from Mexico. Ed's got that breaking news. But we begin with Kristen Fisher. She's got details of the longtime spy chief from North Korea heading to meet with Secretary Pompeo. Good evening, Kristen.
That's right, Shannon. Well, President Trump spoke for about an hour tonight, and he never really addressed the ongoing negotiations taking place all over the world to make this summit in Singapore happen. But he did say something about his national security advisor, John Bolton, who the White House says has been speaking with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts every day and is known for taking a very tough line with the North Koreans.
They think he's so nasty and so tough that I have to hold him back, okay? It's pretty great. And he's doing a great job. You better get some rest because we have some pretty good negotiations coming up.
But first, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is poised to meet with Kim Jong-un's right-hand man in New York City. The two first met when Pompeo was in North Korea. Now Kim Yong-chol is on his way to the United States. He is a huge figure in North Korea. He's currently the vice chairman of the North Korean ruling party's Central Committee. But before that, he was a four-star Army general and military intelligence chief who's believed to be behind the 2014 cyber attack on Sony and an attack in 2010 that killed 50 South Koreans. For that, he was sanctioned by the United States. More recently, though, he was among the small group of North Korean officials who accompanied Kim Jong-un on all four of his summits with foreign leaders in recent months to China and South Korea. He also attended the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics in South Korea, where this picture was taken of him. You can see him in the upper right-hand corner staring at Ivanka Trump and the South Korean president's wife during the closing ceremony. Now, he is about to become the highest level North Korean official to travel to the United States in 18 years. The last time was in 2000, and that had U.S. officials hoping that it, too, would lead to a summit between the leaders of North Korea and the United States. But in the end, nothing ever came of it. But the State Department is hoping that this time around, it'll be different.
I think it's pretty impressive thinking about where we were 1 year ago, where we were even 6 months ago, for that matter. And now we have 3 simultaneous meetings taking place on this matter to talk about the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
As for when this meeting in New York City will be taking place and who exactly will be there, details are still pretty light tonight, but Secretary Pompeo is expected to head up to New York City tomorrow, Shannon.
All right, Kristen Fisher with the latest on the North Korean story. Thank you so much. The president and the Republican National Committee on the same page when it comes to efforts to link Democrats and the failure to crack down on the violent MS-13 gang. Something the president highlighted in his spirited rally tonight. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry joins now. He was fired up, Ed.
Yeah, he really was. President rare form tonight at this rally in Tennessee. The loudest applause really was for him vowing again he's going to be building the wall. And he even joked about how he did not want to cause an international incident, but he renewed his campaign promise that in the end he will force Mexico to pay for the wall and, quote, they're going to enjoy it, he said. Well, breaking tonight, rapid response from the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto, tweeting, President at real Donald Trump. No, Mexico will never pay for a wall. Not now, not ever. Sincerely, Mexico, all of us. Now, as the RNC, though, as you mentioned, unveiled an ad focusing on the threat from MS-13. The president said at this rally he hopes Democrats make immigration an issue in the midterms because he plans to hammer the message that they're for open borders. The president mocking Nancy Pelosi for seeming to defend MS-13 when he called their members animals. Listen to what he said at the rally.
The MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi. She loves MS-13. Can you imagine? Remember? I said they're animals, and she said, how dare you say that? How dare you say that? Have you seen what they've done? Have you seen what they're doing to us? And we're taking them out of our country by the thousands. Out, out.
There is skepticism, though, among some in the president's base. Conservative Ann Coulter suggesting there has been too much talk, tweeting, quote, if only at real Donald Trump faced a midterm election every month, we'd have a wall already. With Trump administration officials also facing false attacks from the left, the White House holding a conference call today to push back on those bogus allegations that you reported on last night about Democrats claiming the president's policies had led to over 1,400 migrant children getting lost. That's not true. Meanwhile, Kellyanne Conway today teeing off on the fact that a CNN reporter retweeted a photo of 2 Latino kids in a cage, tried to claim it was President Trump's fault, when in fact it was a photo from 2014 when, of course, Barack Obama was president. Listen.
Why did a CNN reporter retweet that false fake tweet about the migrant children being in cages? Why would a CNN reporter do that? No, excuse me. Your CNN colleague retweeted 2 migrant children, I suppose, laying in a cage to make the point against this president. It happened under President Obama's watch, and then deleted the tweet because it didn't fit the narrative. Do you or do you not care about the migrant children?
And the White House has now shut down an Obama-era loophole that allowed illegal immigrants to claim they were allowed to be here legally if they call themselves entrepreneurs. The Department of Homeland Security declaring it was an abuse of power by the Obama administration. Shannon.
That conversation's far from over.
A lot happening on immigration.
Thank you, Ed.
Good to see you.
All right, no direct mention of special counsel Robert Mueller in tonight's Nashville rally, but the president did talk about the alleged FBI informant or spy, he says, tried to work his way inside the president's 2016 campaign.
Is there anybody in this big, beautiful arena right now that's infiltrating our campaign? Would you please raise your hand? That would take courage, huh? Now, look, you take a look at what's going on. Never in the history of our country has something taken place like took place during this election.
Let's talk about it with former Republican Congressman from Utah, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. It's great to see you tonight, Jason.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, okay. As to the president's claims and talking about Spygate, the words he's using about somebody infiltrating or trying to get close to the campaign and feed information back to the FBI, Politico says there's no evidence. The Hill says no evidence has emerged to support the president's assertion. CBS News says the president has tried to sow suspicion about the legitimacy of the FBI investigation. No evidence. How do you respond?
Well, the media is changing its story. It was the New York Times that helped reveal this. Look, even James Clapper is referring to this person as a spy. This happened on more than one instance involving more than one person. It's why you need vigorous oversight. And if the Democrats think this is bogus, then they should join with the Republicans in wanting to get all the documents. What's mystifying about the Democrats is Republicans keep wanting openness, transparency, and be able to see all the documents. And it's the Democrats that don't seem to want to get to the truth. Where is their curiosity?
Well, it's interesting in that polling seems to show that the public, at least, is changing its perception of this investigation by some polls. Let's look at one from CBS News. It asks this question saying, you know about the investigation. Do you think it's justified or is the investigation politically motivated? This is from CBS News. They say 53% said politically motivated, 44% said justified. Now, a CNN poll around the same time said, do you approve or disapprove of the way Robert Mueller is handling the investigation? There's been a 4% drop from March to May now. Fewer people say that they believe that he's actually doing a good job with this. Do you think public opinion is turning on this?
I do. I think America's getting tired of it. They've been hearing Russia, Russia, Russia from Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer for more than a year, but there is no evidence of that. The only evidence that we have is the Democrats spending money overseas to engage Russians to help them build this bogus dossier. That is where the direct evidence is. And so when they criticize night after night after night the president of the United States and say all these things, but there's actually no evidence. But we do have evidence that there were people implanted into the Trump campaign to essentially spy on the president's campaign. It's just wrong.
Was it fair to say these who, and we're not naming because we're working to confirm through all reliable sources that we can exactly who we're talking about. There are all kinds of names out there and all kinds of theories out there. But if we're talking about somebody who was outside the campaign but questioning people connected to the campaign, did the semantics matter here? I mean, are we playing with semantics if we're saying somebody infiltrated the campaign, somebody was outside the campaign? I mean, those are important distinctions, or are they not?
They are. And let's remember, according to all the officials, this was a counterintelligence operation, not a criminal investigation. Our government will afford each of the political candidates for the presidency. When it was down to 2, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, they get Secret Service protection. They get briefings from the CIA. If they were truly trying to protect the Trump campaign from the Russians, they should have told Donald Trump and his senior people in the campaign about those efforts. But you only see that in the Trump campaign. You didn't see it in the Clinton campaign. So semantics do matter. And in a counterintelligence, it's treated totally different than a criminal investigation, which the president was assured was not happening.
Yeah, I want to ask you to respond to something really quickly. This comes from Dick Morris, who used to run the Bill Clinton campaign and has worked with the Clintons. He says the idea of having an enemy when you're the subject of a special prosecutor is an important one. He says that Clinton survived because he was able to make Ken Starr the enemy. This president's critics say he's doing the same thing to Mueller.
Well, if you look at bringing on Rudy Giuliani, Giuliani's proximity to Comey and Mueller, I think was a very savvy move by the president. He understands, he's worked with these people, these gentlemen in the past, and he's been out there very publicly making a case that is going to be played out in many ways in the public opinion polls. And so Giuliani and the Trump campaign is very savvy and very much understanding that you got to win the public debate as well.
Well, the polls show that opinion seems to be moving in their direction. So now we'll await the official reports in whatever form we eventually get them. Jason, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, the other cable networks tonight did not air the president's Nashville rally, instead focusing on a tweet by Roseanne Barr that led ABC to almost immediately cancel her show. No mention of it by President Trump tonight at his speech, but Trace Gallagher is tracking it all for us. Good evening, Trace.
Good evening, Shannon. This was a destructive pattern. Roseanne Barr would tweet, apologize, then tweet again, digging herself a deeper hole. It began by Roseanne responding to a tweet accusing former Obama White House advisor Valerie Jarrett of hiding Obama misdeeds. But Roseanne racially attacked Jarrett, who was born in Iran, by saying, quote, Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ, or Valerie Jarrett. Social media went crazy. Roseanne then apologized to Jarrett and all Americans for, quote, making a bad joke, but the damage was done. ABC canceled the reboot of Roseanne. Comedian Wanda Sykes, who consulted on the show, quit, and Valerie Jarrett responded on MSNBC. Watch.
I think we have to turn it into a teaching moment. I'm fine. I'm worried about all the people out there who don't have a circle of friends and followers who come right to their defense. The person who's walking down the street minding their own business and they see somebody cling to their purse or want to cross the street.
And Roseanne Barr's Twitter battle also included liberal billionaire George Soros and Chelsea Clinton, with Barr tweeting, quote, Chelsea Soros Clinton, implying that she had married into the Soros family. Chelsea replied, good morning, Roseanne. My given middle name is Victoria. I imagine George Soros' nephews are lovely people. I'm just not married to one. Roseanne later offered an apology to Clinton, but not without taking a dig at George Soros and another mild jab at Chelsea Clinton, writing, quote, sorry to have tweeted incorrect info about you. Please forgive me. By the way, George Soros is a Nazi who turned in his fellow Jews to be murdered in German concentration camps and stole their wealth. Were you aware of that? But we all make mistakes, right, Chelsea? Rumors that Soros collaborated with Nazis have been debunked. And a Soros spokesman called Roseanne Barr's statement an insult to Holocaust victims, Jewish people, and anyone who honors the truth. It should be noted Roseanne Barr has a history of being controversial both on her show and in real life. Back in the 90s, the show Roseanne, much to ABC's displeasure, routinely dealt with topics like gay marriage, abortion, and racism. And Roseanne Barr has also found herself neck deep in social and political issues, from her mangling of the national anthem in 1990 to running for president in 2012. And we should note, breaking just seconds ago, Roseanne said that she would quit Twitter, and just 2 minutes ago she tweeted this, and I'm quoting, don't feel sorry for me, guys. I just want to apologize to the hundreds of people and wonderful writers, all liberal and talented actors, who lost their jobs on my show due to my stupid tweet. There goes the vow to quit Twitter for Roseanne Barr. Shannon.
Maybe it was just sort of like a temporary quit, a little bit of a reprieve. I don't know. But thank you for tracking all the very latest developments, Trace. Great to see you.
Okay, you too.
In battle, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens announcing tonight he is resigning from office amid a sexual misconduct scandal and allegations of misuse of a charity donor list. The drama surrounding Greitens is looming large over the state's Senate race, where vulnerable Democrat incumbent Claire McCaskill has been highlighting the firestorm in hopes it could tarnish her Republican opponent, Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley.
The governor has done the right thing by the state of Missouri today in resigning his office. Now the state of Missouri can move forward to what is going to be a better day.
Senator McCaskill says the governor's resignation, quote, "I pray for his family and his young children, and I also wish my very best to Lieutenant Governor Parson, who would be taking over in a difficult situation." Well, there's another tough Senate race in Tennessee where the president touched down to support Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. After taking the stage with the commander-in-chief, she will join us live just minutes from now. While the president had plenty of praise for Blackburn, there was no mention of Roseanne Barr, and that scandal Trace reported on. So let's bring in Fox News politics editor of the Halftime Report, Chris Steyerwalt. You wrote about this today.
I did.
Welcome. And you talked about the fact that all of us need to be careful wherever you are on the political spectrum. There are Democrats and Republicans and independents, people who have embraced famous people who speak what they feel, their voices being left out. But everybody's human and everybody's going to make mistakes. So do people embrace everything Roseanne has said? Did they walk away from some of it? I mean, what's the smart thing for people to do, based on whatever their convictions are?
So the president and his followers were so excited that Roseanne Barr, or at least her character on television, was embracing him and that the show was popular.
And gave them a voice.
Right. It was evidence that their movement was succeeding and that these blue-collar, working-class white voters who were felt overlooked and neglected by the system, that they had a voice and that there was cultural change happening. And they ate it by the bushel barrel. They were into it. And then, of course, they were reminded of something. Roseanne Barr has been a train wreck since she was, that is her whole public persona. The whole point of Roseanne Barr is being awful and shocking people. And Trace referenced some of the highlights from her career, but she traffics in these gross conspiracy theories. She has these shocking opinions, whether it's a put on or whether she's unwell or whatever, who knows. Don't embrace somebody just because they join your team. I watched a bunch of Republicans who probably had never even heard the first 3 tracks on College Dropout suddenly say Kanye West is great. We love Kanye West. Slow down. Just you can make up your own mind about who you like and who you don't like as an artist, as an entertainer, as a creative force. Don't let politics make you too stupid.
Well, I feel like my mama used to always say when I was growing up, don't be so enamored with the preacher that if he stumbles that you completely lose your faith. I mean, you can look to people, but we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes, and people will disappoint you regardless of where you are in the political spectrum. Speaking of which, we're going to talk with Congresswoman Blackburn shortly. Tennessee, that's a big race. Let's talk about some of the other big Senate races where the GOP is defending seats, and they may have a tough time.
Well, look, so the Republicans, and you just heard Josh Hawley, who finally got rid of his governor. By the way, throw a necktie on. If you're resigning the office of governor there, Governor Greitens, maybe throw a little four-in hand on.
Didn't have time.
Didn't have time for all that sassafras. But so that's off Hawley's back. But so you have Missouri, West Virginia, Indiana, North Dakota are the 4 seats where Republicans feel the best about their chances, and that they know that they're going to get a couple of those. Unless a freak storm happens, out of those 4 states, they figure they can get a couple. But then the Republicans, even though this is the best map that any party has had since the 20s, really, where the Democrats are defending 3 times more seats than the Republicans, Arizona, Nevada, Tennessee represent states where they're going to have to work to defend. Maybe Texas. We'll see how O'Rourke and Cruz, how that all pans out. But there's 3 where they know that they're playing defense. Now, Blackburn should be able to pull this out because Donald Trump is just the tip of a spear of probably $10-15 million in negative advertising that they're going to dump out on very popular former governor Phil Bredesen. And that's going to be Blackburn's job now, is her negatives are high. She's not a super popular politician in her state. She's got to ruin Bredesen's reputation and have them hate him just as much.
He is a popular guy.
Very much.
I mean, he's been getting praise from Senator Corker, the guy she's hoping to replace, who is a Republican. They've worked together in the past, and they have.
And he's the model. He's the model of what they do in Tennessee. He's a centrist. He's a down the middle kind of guy, businessman. So they like him. So she's just going to have to rough him up, and the Republicans are going to dump money down his britches.
Whoa, down his britches. Okay, well, we'll ask her about that when she's with us live in just a few minutes.
Indeed.
Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you, ma'am.
All right, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo unveils a report detailing the dangers and abuses religious minorities are facing around the globe, including singling out North Korea for stifling religious freedom in the Hermit Kingdom. What impact could that public accusation have on the upcoming summit? That's next. Plus, President Trump in Nashville tonight, stumping for Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn.
Crime is down in the country, but we need Republicans, and we need to get out and vote for Marsha.
She is running for Senate with the president's endorsement. She joins us live next. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo making a big announcement today that puts religious freedom in the spotlight, publicly calling out those who threaten, harass, even kill religious minorities around the globe. Rich Edson is at the State Department with the details on that tonight. Rich?
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will host his first Foreign Ministers Summit in late July, the first ever ministerial to advance religious freedom.
The minister will also be my first to host as the Secretary of State, and that's very intentional. Religious freedom is indeed a universal human right that I will fight for, one that our team at the department will continue to fight for.
Secretary Pompeo announced the summit as the State Department unveiled its annual Religious Freedom Report, a required assessment of religious freedom in about 200 countries and territories. It berates countries like Iran, Russia, and Syria, and countries the administration is in sensitive security and economic negotiations with. On China, the report says, quote, the government continued to exercise control over religion and restrict the activities and personal freedom of religious adherents when the government perceived these as threatening state or Chinese Communist Party. And on North Korea, the report says there are 80 to 100,000 political prisoners, some jailed for religious reasons.
You've got a gulag system operating in North Korea, and it's been a terrible situation for many years.
Former Senator and Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, the ambassador for international religious freedom, unveiled the report today. He also says he requested Myanmar's government give him access to officials and areas where the military persecutes the Muslim minority Rohingya.
I believe it's ethnic cleansing of a religious minority that's taking place. This is going to require a lot of, I think, focus on the international community. Fortunately, the international community is focusing, but I think it's going to require action. And I think you'll see more action coming.
This religious report also mentions the case of an American citizen arrested and detained in Turkey. Pastor Andrew Brunson, one of tens of thousands arrested after a coup attempt there 2 years ago. Shannon?
Rich Edson for us at the State Department. Thank you so much. Well, the Supreme Court will not block an Arkansas law regulating medical abortions, which can be induced by taking a combination of 2 drugs. The state law requires clinics that provide the service to have a contractual relationship with a doctor who has hospital admitting privileges in case there are complications. Well, 2 Planned Parenthood clinics are suing, saying the law will leave women with only 1 abortion provider in the entire state. Though the justices opted not to grant an emergency injunction against the law, the case on the merits itself does continue in a lower courts. Well, the president fresh off a rally in Tennessee tonight, drumming up support for Senate hopeful Republican Marsha Blackburn. She's hoping to replace outgoing Senator Bob Corker in a race that's considered for now a toss-up.
She loves your state. She loves your country. She's going to win. Marsha Blackburn.
Fresh off the stage with the president, Congressman Marsha Blackburn joins us live. Great to have you with us tonight.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, so you're obviously facing a man who's a Democrat who is a very popular former governor. He's gotten even praise, as I mentioned earlier, from one of your Republican colleagues on the Senate side, the man you hope to replace, Senator Bob Corker. A lot of folks have nice things to say about him. It's a tough race, tough polling. So where do you go from here?
Where we go is right to work, and that is what we've been doing every day, Shannon, just working hard to get out our message and to earn every single vote. And today was a great day for us. We had a fundraiser, we had a rally that was a packed house at Nashville's Municipal Auditorium, and we are looking forward to continuing to build that energy and build that network that is necessary to win this race.
I know that you've been confronted by women out there on the campaign trail who don't understand your support of President Trump. They don't support him. The governor, he actually polls better with women in this race than you do. What do you attribute that to, and how will you try to close that gap?
The way you close that gap is pointing to the fact that women every day, Donald Trump's numbers every day improve with women because women know he is working hard to make their lives better. Look at what has happened with the economy, with wage increases, with job opportunities. These are all things that are important. The economy, jobs, that economic security issue is the #1 issue with women. Women also are incredibly supportive of what he is doing doing when it comes to the issue of immigration, securing the border, ending illegal entry of gangs, of drugs, of sex trafficking. So those are places of focus. It is a way for us to build bridges with many women who are independent and Democrats. And I will tell you, I have Republicans, independents, and Democrats all who are active in our campaign and who are supporting me.
Let's talk about another big issue. I just talked there about the Supreme Court deciding it would not get in the way of this Arkansas law that requires any clinics who are using this two-drug protocol to perform abortions to have some connection with a doctor that would then have hospital admitting privileges in the case that there was some kind of complication. Two Planned Parenthood clinics there basically say they won't be able to perform abortions in Arkansas. I know that you headed up the House Select panel that was looking into allegations against Planned Parenthood. But what do you make of their allegations that women are going to be left with basically almost no option there in Arkansas based on what happened at the Supreme Court?
I feel like that part of what you're hearing from Planned Parenthood is a little bit of an overreach. What Arkansas has done and what the court has agreed with is that there should be additional protections for women and for unborn children. And this is something that Arkansas decided they wanted to put in place in their state laws, and it will go into effect.
This is what Planned Parenthood tweeted today. The fight is far from over. This law cannot and must not stand. We will not stop fighting for every person's right to access safe, legal abortion. Hashtag stop the bans. It's clear they plan to continue the legal fight. That's playing out in the lower courts. A number of similar laws around the country are being challenged. And there are split decisions with the courts. I mean, where do you think we're going with as far as this issue ending up at the Supreme Court again on a larger scale?
Well, and that's exactly the right way to look at it. Where does it take us from here? And what we hear is if these groups are for safe, legal, rare, then they should want some protections and restrictions that are going to be there to help inform women, to help educate women, to protect women, and to make certain that they are going to be safe, to make certain that there is that relationship with a physician, with a healthcare provider. To me, that just makes sense that you would want that for it to be the safest possible condition for these women.
Well, not long ago, the Supreme Court struck down some similar regulations in the state of Texas. So we'll continue to track this case as well as many others that are out there. Congresswoman, thanks for making time. Good to see you.
Good to be with you. Thanks, Shannon.
All right, a surge in violence over the weekend in Chicago, sparking a provocative conversation about how the media covers crime and race issues. And Netflix on the defensive, facing criticism for its mega deal with the Obamas. How the head of Netflix is responding tonight. That story's in our Real News Roundup when we return. Yet another violent weekend in Chicago, 36 shot and at least 7 dead. There were an extra 1,300 police officers patrolling the streets in an effort to crack down on crime. The violence comes just days after President Trump tweeted that Chicago police are unable to do their jobs because of the city's bureaucracy. Well, the president also mentioning Chicago tonight, calling out Mayor Rahm Emanuel. And there are growing questions about the way the media is or isn't covering the violence in Chicago. One provocative article in particular getting a lot of attention. Let's talk about it with tonight's panel. Fox News contributor and radio talk show host Richard Fowler and national spokesperson for the Republican National Committee, Kayleigh McEnany. Great to have both of you with us again tonight.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so I want to read this piece in part. Lee Habib wrote this in Newsweek. He says, in Chicago, it's Parkland every weekend. But the media hasn't turned this frenzy of shootings into a round-the-clock marathon like they did with Parkland. There's a reason. A young black male's life is not worth reporting when it's taken by another black male. That's the real racism that prevails in America's newsroom, the marginalization of black urban life. Richard, your response.
Well, I think there's some truth to what he's saying. I think when we ask the question, which the protesters ask daily, do black lives really matter? They're talking about, one, what happens between police and African Americans, but they're also talking about the fact that in our communities, Chicago's not alone, Baltimore, Detroit, New York, you have these cities that are littered with violence. And the reason why we have violence in these cities is for a couple of reasons. One, you have underfunded schools. Two, you have a lack of opportunity. So basically, people are trapped in a pressure cooker, and we're not not doing anything to try to get them out of it. And this is a failure of our government on all levels, starting with the mayor and all the way up to Congress.
Okay, there was something else that the mayor hit on, and it was also in this piece, in this Newsweek piece. Lee Habib in his piece said that this is also about fatherlessness. He said it's something that Rahm Emanuel had mentioned in this way. He said, you've heard me before in talking about this epidemic. There are 4 P's to public safety: policing, prevention, penalties, and parenting. And if you're going to have a program that solves it, you've got to speak to all of that, not some of it. There's some folks who are upset about what they're reading in Lee Habib's piece. It's a touchy subject to talk about this. He cites back to a piece by Juan Williams when he wrote about the fact that in the African American community, now 72% of births are out of wedlock. And he said we have to start talking about that problem.
Absolutely. And in Juan's piece, he also mentioned white communities, and you see fatherlessness increase there. It's a societal problem, happens in all races. It's a cultural problem, and it certainly contributes to a lot of the violence we see. But in terms of what government can do, there's not much they can do to solve fatherlessness, but to Richard's point, you can solve economic opportunity and provide opportunity to get out of these communities, to get into a society or a situation where you're prospering. That's why I'm pleased to see President Trump historically low African American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment. These are the types of things the government can do. They can't solve fatherless homes.
No, but actually the government can solve fatherless homes. I mean, we have a problem, and I think Republicans and Democrats have both identified it to be a problem, is the fact that we have a prison industrial complex that is ridiculous and outrageous, that cost us billions of dollars. If we really cared about ending fatherless homes, if we really cared about fixing this problem, then there would be a march on Capitol Hill every day to make sure that our criminal justice system works for everybody, right? When an African-American man goes to jail for 2 times the sentence that a white person does for the same crime, we have a larger problem on our hands, and the government can actually fix that.
Sure, but Richard, we agree on that, which is why you should applaud Van Jones and Jared Kushner and the prison
there are those who are working together on that, and that's been one of the few bright spots of bipartisanship. It seems like in Washington these days that there is an agreement that that's a real problem, and they're trying to work, 2 sides, on finding some kind of solution to it.
But what is also a problem, and you hit on this at the beginning, is the media aspect of this. We don't focus on the names of the people who died in Chicago this weekend. Bobbiana Slyons, a 20-year-old girl walking with her mother and daughter, slaughtered on the streets. A young 17-year-old killed in her bedroom. These names we should know too, but the liberal mainstream media doesn't fit their narrative of crime that they'd like to cover, and so these names are ignored, and their names are not even listed anymore online the way they should.
Don't you think we should know their names? I mean, is that a fair point, that because they don't fit a certain narrative, that the media doesn't get very jazzed up about some of these stories?
No, absolutely. I think we should know their names, and I think every day, if you talk to the activists in Chicago who fight for these people's lives, remember, the South Side and the West Side of Chicago didn't have an emergency room in a hospital until just a couple months ago, when a hospital was finally opened after the people demanded for weeks and weeks. Chicago was also home to the diet hunger strike, where hunger strikers struck for almost 30 days so they can get a local high school in their community. So we can have a conversation about fatherlessness and all these other excuses, but to me, I think that's it's crazy to say that the only problem we have is fatherlessness.
No. And like Rahm Emanuel said, he said you've got to look at these 4 different things. There are many different things that have to happen. There has to be prevention. We have to beef up police. We have to be in communities. We have to be helping parents. So I mean, I think that that people agree there's a stew of problems.
I agree with you, and I was raised with just a mother, right? And this ideal of broken homes, which is a narrative that fatherlessness sort of brings up, is a false notion. A home is not broken if there's love there. Me and my brother, 2 African-American men, never part of the criminal justice system, both quote-unquote great citizens, and we did that because we had a mother who loved us and who was committed to parenting their child. There doesn't have to be a man in the house to parent your child. It's just that we need to make sure that we provide mothers and single fathers and single grandmothers and single grandfathers the supports and resources they need so they can meet the needs of their children. And that's what's not happening in Chicago. That's what's not happening in Detroit. And that's what's not happening in Baltimore, why activists there over and over again are saying, please fund our schools. Please fix our broken communities. Please bring opportunity back. And that's not happening.
But you do make a really good point, because at the end of the day, it is about love. And I was very touched to see a community who all these fathers showed up at the school and were there for kids who did come from fatherless homes, because it does come down to love. You're right about that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And your mom is a perfect example of the way that happens. And my mom, for much of my life, was a single mom, too. Yeah. So thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, time now for your Real News Roundup. Netflix pushing back on claims it's making a sharp left turn after inking a deal with former President and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama. The company's chief content operator telling an industry event Tuesday that company is, quote, not the Obama network, and that the two would not be producing any news programming. Lawyers for Morgan Freeman demanding CNN retract a report about sexual harassment and misconduct claims. His lawyers claim the network baited and prodded witnesses to say bad things about the actor, and that one of the women identified by the network now says they misrepresented her comments. Spokesperson for the network says it stands by its reporting. Washington, D.C.'s Metro facing backlash over rejecting an ad from the ACLU to promote its annual conference, which will include civil rights icon, Democratic Congressman John Lewis. Metro says the ad violates its policy on issue advocacy, and if it accepts the ACLU ad, it would then have to accept ads from groups like the Ku Klux Klan. Well, another populist revolt breaks out, and this time the elites shut it down. But the battle's not over yet. Amy Kellogg next on the chaos erupting in Europe's over Italy's anti-Euro election. And honoring a hero, friends and neighbors remember Edison Herman. This is the veteran, the man who was swept away in the Ellicott City, Maryland floods while he was trying to help someone else. U.S. stock markets tumbled today as a result of political uncertainty in Italy. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Amy Kellogg explains how a controversial veto from Italy's president threw the country into political turmoil today.
Amidst so much political uncertainty and falling markets, the governor of the Bank of Italy had a clear message on Tuesday.
The destiny of Italy is that of Europe. We are part of a great economic area that is profoundly integrated.
But not everyone is so sure. Italy's president Sunday rejected a government put forward by the two dominant political parties who had been green-lighted to go into coalition. It was to be Europe's first populist government. Despite the party saying Europe had nothing to worry about, Italy's president was concerned they would try to take the country out of the euro. There will be a technical government for now, led by this man, Carlo Cottarelli, and then fresh elections. The two populist parties who had come so close to ruling say they'll be back with a vengeance. One of the coalition's leaders, Matteo Salvini, furious about the withdrawal of support for the proposed government, has promised the next elections will be a referendum on the euro. And the other populist leader, Luigi Di Maio, Monday expressed his anger at the Italian president.
Ciao a tutti. Last night was the darkest hour in Italy's democracy.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has praised Italy's president's foresight.
L'Italie est un partenaire important pour la France.
Italy is an important partner for France on all issues. A historic partner, a present partner, and a future partner, who we respect and who we need on our side for the European project.
Many people are complaining that their voices weren't heard after they gave such big numbers to the Five-Star Movement and the League, the two anti-establishment parties who were supposed to be leading Italy next. There's also speculation that this political martyrdom may actually serve their interests in the next ballot and, frankly, make their positions more radical. It is hard to find people around here who think that the situation looks particularly bright at the moment. Shannon.
Amy Kellogg, thank you very much. Remembering a hero, we pay tribute to Edison Herman, the veteran who died in Ellicott City, Maryland in the floods while trying to help a neighbor. We'll tell you his story. Stay with us. Tonight, we want to recognize a man virtually unknown until his last act of heroism. His friends are calling it, quote, the most Eddie act ever. Edison Herman's body was recovered today after he was swept away trying to save a woman from the raging floods in Ellicott City, Maryland. Garrett Tenney is on the scene with his story.
There is no shortage of platitudes to describe Edison Herman. Those who knew Eddie, as his friends called him, say he was always happy, loved life, and was always looking to help. He joined the Air Force in 1996 and served on active duty for 10 years. A few years later, he became a weekend warrior by joining the Army National Guard, where he eventually became a sergeant. But even outside the military, the 39-year-old was always looking to help others. At Victoria's Gastropub in Columbia, Maryland, where he worked for the past 11 years, his boss says he was always eager to jump in when his coworkers could use a hand. But on Sunday evening, it was a complete stranger who needed a hand. Eddie was at a restaurant in Ellicott City when flash flooding turned Main Street into a river. When it started, witnesses say he was trying to hold the doors closed to keep water out. But when he saw a woman outside yelling for help, he didn't hesitate. As he tried to reach her, though, Eddie was swept away.
He'd do that for anyone. He's done so much for me in my life, and that's just him. I mean, he's served in 2 branches. He was an Air Force guy, he was an Army guy. Just really an amazing guy.
Make no doubt about it,
Mr. Herman is a hero who put the lives of others before his own.
This afternoon, after search and rescue teams found Eddie's body, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan praised the veteran, saying he was a man who dedicated his life and service to others, both in the Air Force and the Maryland National Guard, and again on Sunday night. Today, on the heels of Memorial Day, the one word we kept hearing used to describe Eddie from his friends, co-workers, and the woman he tried to save is hero. And that's how Eddie will be remembered, Shannon, as a hero and a good man.
Garrett, thank you so much. In service to our country and in service to a complete stranger, he is the definition of a hero. We send all our best to those who've been left behind, his loved ones and family. Most watched, most trusted, and most grateful that you spent your evening with us. Good night from Washington. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Shannon Bream.